Universal grammar (UG) is a theory in linguistics, usually credited to Noam Chomsky, proposing that the ability to learn grammar is hardwired into the brain. It is sometimes known as mental grammar, and stands opposed to other grammars, for example prescriptive, descriptive and pedagogical. The theory suggests that linguistic ability becomes manifest without being taught. See the poverty of the stimulus argument, and that there are properties that all natural human languages share. It is a matter of observation and experimentation to determine precisely what abilities are innate and what properties are shared by all languages. The theory of universal grammar proposes that if human beings are brought up under normal conditions, not those of extreme sensory deprivation, then they will always develop language with certain properties, for example, distinguishing nouns from verbs, or distinguishing function words from lexical words. The theory proposes that there is an innate, genetically determined language faculty that knows these rules, making it easier and faster for children to learn to speak than it otherwise would be. This faculty does not know the vocabulary of any particular language, so words and their meanings must be learned, and there remain several parameters which can vary freely among languages, such as whether adjectives come before or after nouns, which must also be learned. As Chomsky puts it, evidently, development of language in the individual must involve three factors. 1. Genetic endowment, which sets limits on the attainable languages, thereby making language acquisition possible. 2. External data, converted to the experience that selects one or another language within a narrow range. 3. Principles not specific to the faculty of language. Occasionally, aspects of universal grammar seem describable in terms of general details regarding cognition. For example, if a predisposition to categorize events and objects as different classes of things is part of human cognition, and directly results in nouns and verbs showing up in all languages, then it could be assumed that rather than this aspect of universal grammar being specific to language, it is more generally a part of human cognition. To distinguish properties of languages that can be traced to other facts regarding cognition from properties of languages that cannot, the abbreviation UG* can be used. UG is the term often used by Chomsky for those aspects of the human brain which cause language to be the way that it is. That is our universal grammar in the sense used here, but here for discussion, it is used for those aspects which are furthermore specific to language. Thus UG, as Chomsky uses it, is just an abbreviation for universal grammar, but UG** as used here is a subset of universal grammar. In the same article, Chomsky casts the theme of a larger research program in terms of the following question: how little can be attributed to UG while still accounting for the variety of I languages attained, relying on third-factor principles? I languages meaning internal languages, the brain states that correspond to knowing how to speak and understand a particular language, and third-factor principles meaning 3 in the previous quote. Chomsky has speculated that UG might be extremely simple and abstract, for example only a mechanism for combining symbols in a particular way, which he calls merge. The following quote shows that Chomsky does not use the term UG in the narrow sense UG* suggested above. The conclusion that merge falls within UG holds whether such recursive generation is unique to Florida faculty of language or is appropriated from other systems. That is, merge is part of UG because it causes language to be the way it is universal, and is not part of the environment or general properties independent of genetics and environment. Merge is part of universal grammar whether it is specific to language, or whether, as Chomsky suggests, it is also used for an example in mathematical thinking. The distinction is important because there is a long history of argument about UG*, whereas most people working on language agree that there is universal grammar. Many people assume that Chomsky means UG* when he writes UG, and in some cases he might actually mean UG*. Some students of universal grammar study a variety of grammars to extract generalizations called linguistic universals, often in the form of if X holds true, then Y occurs. These have been extended to a variety of traits, such as the phonemes found in languages, the word orders which languages choose, and the reasons why children exhibit certain linguistic behaviors. Later linguists who have influenced this theory include Chomsky and Richard Montague, developing their version of this theory as they considered issues of the argument from poverty of the stimulus to arise from the constructivist approach to linguistic theory. The application of the idea of universal grammar to the study of second language acquisition (SLA) is represented mainly in the work of McGill linguist Lydia White. Syntacticians generally hold that there are parametric points of variation between languages, although heated debate occurs over whether UG constraints are essentially universal due to being hardwired. Chomsky's principles and parameters approach, a logical consequence of a specific syntactic architecture, the generalized phrase structure approach, or the result of functional constraints on communication, the functionalist approach. In an article titled, "The Faculty of Language, What is it, Who has it, and How did it evolve?" Hauser, Chomsky, and Fitch present the three leading hypotheses for how language evolved and brought humans to the point where they have a universal grammar. The first hypothesis states that the FLB, faculty of language in the broad sense, is strictly homologous to animal communication. This means that homologous aspects of the faculty of language exist in non-human animals. The second hypothesis states that the FLB is a derived, uniquely human adaptation for language. This hypothesis holds that individual traits were subject to natural selection and came to be very specialized for humans. The third hypothesis states that only the FLN, faculty of language in the narrow sense, is unique to humans. It holds that while mechanisms of FLB are present in both humans and non-human animals, the computational mechanism of recursion is recently evolved solely in humans. This is a hypothesis which most closely aligns to the typical theory of universal grammar championed by Chomsky.